So that's the reason US is there in Afghanistan. And the US definitely, had there been a country of Afghanistan where there was a political stability, where there was economic stability, it would have been difficult for the US to come and to make its bases in Afghanistan. So, but then this is a bigger game, you understand, as I told you, why US is here in Afghanistan. But what we need to do, every country has their own interests. US has their own interests in the region. We do understand all those interests, and US has their interest to be there in Afghanistan. We do understand those interests. You cannot stop US from going to Afghanistan, but we can put our house in order. This is what we can do, and we can negotiate, and we have been negotiating with the US. As you know, the recent negotiations taking place in those in Middle East related to peace in Afghanistan, and there are certain conditions which we forced the United States to accept. As you can see, there's no role given to the India in those negotiations. So, and secondly, yes, terrorism is coming from Afghanistan. There's no doubt, as I highlighted. We have taken certain measures, and as I told you, our peace in Pakistan is dependent on the peace in Afghanistan. And your worry about the Afghan people who are living in Pakistan is very true. But then, unfortunately, our country has been getting benefited from because of those Afghanis living in Pakistan. There are thousands and millions of dollars we have been receiving from UNHCR, because we were hosting those Afghani nationals here. The problem in sending those Afghanis back to Pakistan, I have served in FATA myself. So the problem is, initially the problem was when we started sending them back, it used to happen because those were open borders, and there were only 2 points. One was the Torkham and the other was Chaman. We used to send them back from Torkham. They used to come back other day from Chaman. And we used to send them back from Chaman, and they used to come back after a couple of days from Torkham and other different places. The border is open. So we have been making effort, but as I told you, it is dependent now on as soon as we complete this fencing of the border. So there is a complete program of these Afghani nationals through UNHCR that we have to send them back. We have been sending them back, but they have been coming again, living in different places of the country. So now when the border is fenced, when we'll be sending them back, as you know, now there is a proper mechanism of passport. Instead of just coming through showing a national ID card, there is no, it is no more there. So any Afghan national who is coming to Pakistan right now is coming through a valid passport and valid visa. So this has started in last 1 year. So gradually we are trying to exert. Our state is trying to exert, and inshallah, when we have this complete border fence, and those Afghani nationals who are living in refugees or refugee camps whom we will be sending back, they will not be coming back. So this was the reason, and inshallah we will overcome this problem in next couple of years when this all activities are done.
All right, fair enough. Okay, anybody else? I hope you have been answered.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
Please.
and I'm really very much happy to see my mentor, my boss, Sector Command Qasim Ranger Sir Brigadier Khushid, uh, and have a wonderful interaction regarding transnational terrorism and in Pakistan and in other countries. Sir, चीज़ों को एनालाइज करना, तो जिस तरह से आपने अपनी कमांड के दौरान सब सेक्टर को बहुत बदल डाला और उसमें बहुत बेहतर तब्दीलियां लाई, तो सर आपसे मैं ये सवाल करना चाहता हूँ कि सर हम पाकिस्तान को किस तरह से बेहतर कर सकते हैं जो अभी हमारी
Mr. Javed, you are not audible. I think that distortion.
Javed,
circumstances हैं
Javed, you
लोगों
are
के हवाले से
Javed, you are
इंटरनल सर प्रॉब्लम्स जो लोगों के अंदर हार्मनी नहीं है जिसमें
Mr. Javed,
Javed, you are a bit distorted. If you can come again.
can you please ask, write down in your chat? You can ask your question in the chat box so we can answer, because you are not audible properly. There's a distortion. Okay, ji, Mr. Naveed, Mr. Naveed, you can ask, please.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Am I, sir, audible to everyone? Sir?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
जी alhamdulillah.
सर
I'm sorry, I'm unable to hear you.
Yes,
Sir,
Mr.
there is
Naveed.
someone else, sir.
Ji, Mr. Naveed, you can.
सर मैं
Sir, there is someone else interrupting us, sir.
Mr. Javed, we are not hearing you properly. I think आप reconnect हो जाए या फिर अपना question chat box में mention कर लें. जी Javed, जी continue.
Sir Khurshid,
Ji, please.
overall, sir, overall lecture was informative and wonderful, sir. And one thing fascinated me, that you find out the root causes of terrorism. So that was much informative for me. And it motivated me to ask you a question about a response and the combating.
Javed, if you can hold. Javed, if you can mute you. Let Naveed ask question, then we'll come to you.
Yeah, I have muted him. Please go ahead, Naveed.
Naveed, please.
Sir, my question is related to the response and combating a terrorism. For example, as there is a Doha peace talks with Taliban. So why we organized governments along with a heavy armor support, mechanized infantry, we are going to do a peace talks with these Taliban, even though we know that these are the people who are behind the huge massacre of Pakistani people. So why we are doing them? Why we are failed to find out their hideouts, safe havens, their center of gravity, and why means we are largely supported by the technologies, telecommunication technologies, highest intelligence, even CIA, ISI, they are remarkable intelligence agencies in the world. Then why we are failed to find out their hideouts, safe havens, and why we are doing a peace talks with them? Why we are become so feeble and weakened before them to do a peace talks? Even we know more than 50,000 people of Pakistan uh, had been massacred by them in a very hideous way.
Okay. Naveed, thank you. I know it's a sort of emotional question you have asked, and I know the reason. You know so many things behind the curtain, and that's the reason of your question. I would just make an endeavor to reply your question. As you know, gentlemen, there are two types of operations we carried out against we can say the terrorist. One is the sort of kinetic operations. When I say, for certain colleagues which may not be privy to this terminology, kinetic operations are the one which are carried out by the security forces or the law enforcement agencies, military, second line forces, to root out the hideouts, to go into the mountains, to go into the build-up areas and carried out physical operations against those terrorists. So Alhamdulillah, we have been very successful in those sort of kinetic operations. But the problem in the kinetic operations which I've seen and we have faced and we see today also, especially operations along the border with Afghanistan, because the borders were free. The borders, there was no check on the border. Though when we used to go for the operations, let's say, take example of North and South Pakistan, those terrorists, they used to move across the border and used to go to the Afghanistan. And they were sitting in the lapses of Indians and the Americans. Let me say very explicitly here. And so this was the unfortunate was the reason that our kinetic operations, although to an extent they were successful, but then to if I can say, there have been incidents, there have been places, and there have been people who used to carry operations inside Pakistan. And when we used to go and for the kind of operation, they used to go and move out of Afghanistan. So this is one thing. And this second type of operations, as you, Naveed, you are aware of, is sort of IBOs, intelligence-based operations that you have been and we have been carrying out, and those have been successful to an extent. But then there is a nexus to all this. The important thing which I want to make a point here is that we don't have to take things in isolation. There are stakes of so many countries in and around us. The countries which are our enemies, declared enemies or undeclared enemies, or those so-called our friends. There are so many things, gentlemen, I cannot name those countries. And there have been countries, unfortunately, on the face of it, they are our friends, but then they are stepping on our backs, and they are patronizing those terrorists, those who are sitting in Afghanistan. They are giving them funds, they are giving them material and material support and financial support. That is the reason that those people which Naveed is pointing out, whom we know, that they have massacred our thousand people here in Pakistan. They are sitting in Afghanistan because they are being patronized and they are being sponsored by some of the countries in and around us. So unfortunately, we are not a state. We are not a state who can annoy all the countries who are we may say so-called our friends. We cannot annoy those countries who are giving us financial supports. We cannot make annoy those states who have been supporting us. I wish we have been a country who have been politically and economically vibrant and independent. That be the case, then there would have been no negotiation in Doha, there would have been no negotiation in Qatar, and there would have been no negotiation in Kabul and Islamabad. The situation would have been different. So right now, what we are in a dilemma. If we take those people which Naveed is referring and make them our enemies, then those countries who are sitting, who especially the India who is in our east, they are hell bent to provide moral, financial, and material support to those groups. So we are at a stage we have to come to negotiation. We have to bring those people to negotiations. We cannot go and target those people while they're sitting in Kabul, while they're sitting in Jalalabad, while they're sitting in Kandahar. Unfortunately, we cannot act like, for example, United States. Let's we send a drone and kill an Iranian general while he's landing in Iraq and Syria. So we don't have that technology. To an extent, we have technology, but then beside the technology, there has to be a political will. There has to be economically vibrant country who can take those stern actions and steps independently. Unfortunately, it's hard to swallow. If I can say that our foreign policy are not so as independent as it appears to be on the face of it. So there are so many ifs and buts. Because of those things, unfortunately we have to talk to those people whom we know that they have carried out massacre in our country. Naveed, I hope I answered you.
Well,
It's
yes.
wonderful, sir. It's
All
wonderful.
right, Ji.
Thank
Okay,
you so much,
Ji.
sir.
Is there any question?
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Welcome.
Yes,
Sir, there is nexus between terrorism and organized crime in our country recently. So, what is your analysis on this?
She asked about there's a connection and
Yeah,
nexus.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I know.
All right.
Yes, there is an nexus. There is a nexus between terrorist and organized crime. This nexus is there. Why it is there? Because there are organizations in the country. In terms of terrorist organization, they operate at a smaller scale. And there are organizations in the country which they operate at a medium scale, and there are organizations in the country who have their roots across in various other countries which are involved in sort of a transnational terrorism. So what happens? Those terrorist organizations which are operating at smaller level, they develop a nexus with the criminal gangs organizations, and that nexus they develop because of gaining financial support, because of gaining moral support, because of getting hideouts from those people. So ultimately, when both are beneficiaries, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. So that give them that interest to develop intimacies amongst themselves or between themselves. So it has to be there because ultimately they both are criminals. So and in certain cases, I'm sure some of my colleagues who have this knowledge, who are in this Zoom conference, they know that we have seen this nexus. We found certain terrorist organization people carrying out dacoities, and they carrying out bank dacoities. So because they need money to survive. Then they need people who become part of their cadre. So that's why the nexus is there, because their interests are interlinked.
All right. Very good. Okay. Again, there's a question of Dr. Javed. I think he asked about.
Ji Javed.
Okay. I think he has mentioned a question. He asked that.
Sir, sir,
Javed,
can you hear me,
straight
please?
away. Yeah, I can hear you. Straight away, go to the question.
Yes, yes. पूछें जी. You can.
सर 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 वेरी नाइस एंड इंफॉर्मेटिव टॉक सर मेरा सवाल ये है कि सर जो अभी हमारे मुल्क के सिनारियो चल रहे हैं या ग्लोबल जो सिचुएशन है उसमें दुनिया में ट्रांसनेशनल टेररिज्म बहुत बढ़ती जा रही है सर आप उसका क्या फ्यूचर देख रहे हैं और सर इस वक्त पाकिस्तान को क्या करना चाहिए हमारे अंदरूनी जो रिलेशन है अवाम का गवर्नमेंट पे ट्रस्ट या अवाम का आपस में एक दूसरे के साथ हारमोनी के साथ रहना या फ्यूचर सर इसका आप क्या देख रहे हैं और हमें क्या करना चाहिए पाकिस्तान को क्योंकि पाकिस्तान इसमें सर बहुत अफेक्ट हो रहा है सर आप
Okay,
क्या
thank
इसमें
you.
राय
Javed, as I told you earlier, gentlemen, as I did during the course of my presentation also, terrorism will never finish. It is there in last couple of centuries. It will never finish, but it will change its shape. It might change its pattern. It might go slow down in terms of intensity, because such organizations, they have been operating in the past, and they are operating now, and they will be operating in the future also. So there's one thing. It will not finish, but it will change its pattern. It will change its. They might change their mechanism. Why? I'm just giving an example about a couple of about, let's say, a decade back. Terrorists never used to use the social media. Terrorists had no concept of sort of giving narrative. The terrorists in let's say 60s, 70s, 80s, they never thought of using these technologies. But today's terrorists, sort of, as you know, we can detect their calls, but they have gone on VOP. The terrorists might be talking in the next room to you on a WhatsApp, or maybe on some other social media tool, but you cannot detect them. So this is a sort of a changing pattern. You might find different technologies. They will be adopting those technologies. So it will not finish. It will continue, but it might slow down in terms of intensity. It might change its pattern and its mechanism. What should Pakistan do? As I highlighted, why a country become, why terrorists find a country, why terrorists find those target those countries which are economically weak, where there lack democracies, where there is political instability, which have open borders, where there is no law and order, where there is no governance. So if you see the history in the past also, and now also, so most of the terrorist activities are carried out in those countries which have unfortunately, these things in them. And Pakistan, as you know, we wish and pray to see Pakistan on the leadership positions or in the list of world countries. But unfortunately, we must accept this reality. In the international arena, Pakistan stands nowhere. To be very honest, some of my colleagues know I have served in the United Nations. I have participated in the meetings of the United Nations Security Council. We have no say there. Okay, why we have no say? We used to have a say in 60s and 70s, early 60s and 70s, when Pakistan was politically stable, when Pakistan was economically stable, when Pakistan there was no divide as we have today in terms of various sects, in terms of various classes, in terms of provincialism, in terms of class and creed. So Pakistan, there was a time, I'm sure you're all aware of, our president was given a red carpet welcome in the Washington. So you imagine we have from 70s onward till and in last about 4 or 5 decades where we have come, and this all what you question, I would like to say that the day we become economically vibrant, the day we become politically stable, the day we gain stability in terms of our various classes and creeds. So there will be no terrorism in Pakistan. So terrorists, they find safe haven, the sanctuaries in those countries which are politically unstable, where there is no governance, where there's no law and order. Okay, so that's the reason. Just please, want to
Thank
say
you, sir.
something?
I think that's fair enough.
Okay.
Very good. Widely addressed. Yes, Mr. Amar Farooq, you can please ask your question.
यस सर, आपने बात की है इसमें टेररिज्म की जो बेसिक रूट्स हैं उस पे आपने काफ़ी रोशनी डाली, लेकिन एक बहुत अहम मेरे ख्याल में पॉइंट रह गया कि इसमें इस्टेब्लिशमेंट का जो रोल है हमारी फोर्सेस का, मतलब अगर आप देखें पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी तो आती रही, लेकिन हमारे टेररिज्म जब भी ज़्यादा बढ़ा है वो मार्शल लॉ के दौर में बढ़ा है, और ये एक तरह का जैसे इनका कोई कनेक्शन है। और एक हमारी दूसरी बात ये है कि आइडियोलॉजिकल बड़ी कन्फ्यूजन है। ज़ियाउल हक साहब ने इन सबको करार दे दिया था मुजाहिद, और मुजाहिद फ़ौज के कहने पे और सोवियत यूनियन के खिलाफ लड़े, वो एक लंबी कहानी। मुशर्रफ साहब सपोर्ट करते रहे जमात-उद-दावा को और दूसरों को, जिनकी वजह से एफएटीएफ आज तक पाबंदियाँ लगा रही हैं। हमीद गुल साहब इंटरव्यूज़ में ये बातें कहते, मतलब इस सब में से एक जो बहुत बड़ा जो मुझे पॉइंट मिस लगता है वो एस्टेब्लिशमेंट का रोल, कि उन्होंने किस तरह बैकिंग की और कैसे पाकिस्तान में ख़ास तौर पे ये फ्लरिश हुआ। तो काइंडली इस पे थोड़ी-सी रोशनी डालें।
Thank you. A very pertinent and valid question. I was expecting somebody will ask this question. If you see, if you must have seen in my presentation, what was the last root cause I told you? Do you remember? Can you tell me? Which I said the biggest root cause of terrorism?
Unpopular foreign policy decisions.
Yes, Umar, did you see that slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so foreign policy, why I've said this, irrespective whether there is a dictatorship or whether there is a democratic government in place, it has to do something with the foreign policy. Okay, if you talk about, if I can say that, if you talk about, you said about Ziaul Haq's time, when we were training those mujahideens along with the Americans. I'm sure we all privy to all this. That was a foreign policy decision that we have to support America in its war against USSR. You remember? And Afghanistan was used as a base. So you are right to an extent. So that was, to me, if I see it in hindsight, that was a foreign policy decision, and that was a foreign policy mistake, and that in fact that was the triggering point that we are facing it today. Those same people whom we were training in 70s, in 80s, and they became our enemies in 20s, right? So that is a foreign policy decision. Likewise, you talk about the Masharut period again. This is, as you can say that again, this was a foreign policy decision to support the United States and in Afghanistan. Okay, so link it with irrespective of whosoever is there. But if you make a foreign policy, if you are not a visionary enough to realize what will happen after 10, 20 years, then you see, unfortunately, those things happen. All those states who are dictated, I may say, in their foreign policy, or who are compelled to adopt a certain policy, then you have repercussions. And unfortunately, we can see those repercussions in Pakistan also, in various other parts of the world, like Afghanistan, like Syria, like Middle East. Okay, so the foreign policy on the face of it appears to be a very small thing, but it has implications
All
because
right.
its implication.
All right. Okay. We are really running
Please,
short of time, so we have to take only 2 to 3 more questions, I think. Okay. Mr. Rehan, you have any question? Mr. Rehan.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum to all.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much, Khurshid Saab, for your valuable time. Actually, I want to ask about the question related to the business scenario. And these days, Pakistan is growing states of small businesses. We are having entrepreneurship term. Universities are using incubation centers. So, what are your recommendations to control and identify the illegal amounts are coming? Like before, we have from non-profit, and now we are working under the umbrella of for-profit in the term of transnational crime.
okay. Can you link your question with the terrorism? What implication your
Yes.
question will have on
Rehan,
transnational
please
terrorism?
elaborate your question, basically.
Okay, the implications of my question related to the business, like transnational crime always work under the umbrella of businesses, and business is good for everyone. Is a very simple terminology. So these days we are the states of Pakistan having a growing businesses opportunities for youngsters and for all others. So the same amount which we are taking from donor agencies in previous era as non for profit, now we are taking as a for profit through the terms of entrepreneurship or something like this. So I'm asking your recommendations to regulate as a state and use it in a good way.
Okay. I think we partially touched this question, sort of as I highlighted that, what are the FATF conditions for Pakistan, especially regarding the banking channel that finances, and to an extent we have addressed those things. The all transaction which has to come in Pakistan and go out of Pakistan, it has to be regulated through banking channel. There is no other second way of like going through Hundi, like other channels that will not no more be used. And there is the restraint action being taken. Any amount more than 15 lakh through by any person that is reported by the banks to the State Bank of Pakistan to dig out where that amount has come and whom it is going. So we are already working on this, and the FATF conditions we have already addressed, and we have not left to an extent any stone unturned that any money which is routing in and out Pakistan, it has to route through a banking channel. There are incentives which the banks are giving to the people, and we are those sort of actions against Benami accounts, against the actions against those channels which used to hide money, they have already been declared illegal. And now SCCP, they have its regulation now. The State Bank of Pakistan has its regulation now in place that no transaction will take place through on unauthorized channels. And any transaction taking place, those people will be taken to task.
All right, very rightly said. I hope that you have been answered.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right, okay. We'll take one more question. So if anybody has a question, please ask. We are going to wind up our session now.
Sir, it's me, Sir Naveed again, sir.
All right.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Sir, terrorism reinventing itself from time to time. So, sir, there is another concept, the transnational terrorism is also called a fifth wave terrorism. Can we equate it with a fifth generation warfare?
Yes, pertinent question. You know, hybrid warfare or fifth generation warfare, gentlemen, it is primarily making use of beside the things the terrorists used to use for the terrorist activities. It has been coupled with the sort of psychological warfare. It has been coupled with the information warfare. It has been coupled with the internet, and it has been coupled with the narratives. So primarily, now what you are highlighting is a war of narrative and war of social media, I may say. You know what the states nowadays do, what the terrorists do, they throw their theme, they throw the narratives on through social media and internet. And this is how they create chaos in the states and countries. You know, one of the fifth generation warfare, if I can say, and I'm sure you all will agree to me, which has been imposed on us by our enemies, is sort of creating chaos in the country and creating pessimism in the country. You know, every second Pakistani you meet and you talk, he will say, "Yaar, like Pakistan ke pata nahi kya hone wala hai, is mulk ka pata nahi kya banega." So this is that thing. And this has been imposed to us through not only social media, but unfortunately, our this media channels, the electronic media channel, the print media channel, they're also part of it to an extent. You know, when you open a channel, unfortunately, you always find a bad news. They will not find them projecting any good news. So when you create that disparity and that chaos in a state, in a country, where people don't have belief in them, when people don't have belief in their state, so that's what you are hinting at, you're pointing out. And unfortunately, that war has been imposed on us. But our state is privy to this. I'm sure you know the Prime Minister and the Chief of Army Staff, Pat O'Brien, they have talked about this fifth generation warfare. And but we must have to guard. And when I say it is not only the state of Pakistan or the institution they have to guard, everyone has to understand why this chaos, why this pessimism is being spread in the minds of our people. So we have to believe in our state, we have to believe in ourselves. And that is the only way that besides sort of those kinetic operations, because of those other measures we have been taking, the people of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan has to believe in itself. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Naveed,
sir.
all right. Okay. I think we already getting a lot of time, and I think time is should wind for discussion. I just want to this may be a question to Khurshid Saab, and I think
Please, sir.
I will just try to make your analysis on that for a general all students and myself as well. That there is a different sort of international legal mechanism particularly supporting the combating the policy against terrorism. I mean, what I have gone through about the UNO International Crime and Justice Research Center has sanctioned a policy kit, okay, policy toolkit in 2019. In that particular committee, they have focused on the three areas: research, information sharing, local engagement, and capacity building and law of laws of agencies. Okay, regarding the transnational combating terrorism, we have similar type of policy kit that have been sanctioned in 2014. There's National Action Plan. Okay, and we have around
Sir.
20 different protocols or provisions of it. I just want you analysis, being a professional and related with law enforcement, how many of the protocols of the recommendation of NAP has been achieved up to now, to what extent, and how many protocols we have not even addressed and even touched even, and what is the impact of it on the war on terror, basically.
Sir.
Yeah.
So I would what I know about those points of National Action Plan, especially those were which were related to the security force, or to an extent to the kinetic operation, to the clearance of certain areas. They have been they have been addressed to quite an extent. But those actions which were to be taken by other stakeholders of the state, unfortunately, there is not much progress on that. and that is dependent because of political stability. Okay, as I highlighted earlier, if you have a political stability, a vibrant political government take those decisions. But unfortunately, if you don't have a political stability, if you are divided between you and me and them, like a position in government, then you cannot take those actions. So I cannot enumerate those right now, but those were
Right.
related to the policy decisions. They have not been addressed, unfortunately.
One of
And
the
until unless
protocols
we get addressed.
explained that there should be a revamping of whole criminal justice system, like restructuring and revamping of the whole
Yes, yeah.
justice system. But I
Yes,
don't think that we have developed.
yes, you're absolutely right, sir. That includes our policing, that includes
Right.
our judicial system also, and unfortunately, that has not been addressed. Rather, I can see a sort of decline in it, and
Right.
I'm sure you're privy to it
Right.
because the certain actions which were taken in the